Alright guys, I was going to talk a little bit about why the set is different and stuff, but after doing the research for this video, I realized that this is kind of an important topic to talk about, and so I'm just going to get right into it. All partisanship aside, and again, for those of you who haven't ever watched this channel, or maybe for some reason watched this channel years ago and not recently, you should know that I make a very, very serious effort to check my own personal politics at the door and cover stuff neutrally. But I got a series of emails regarding the recount in the Florida election, and it led me to do some digging into the situation. And what I found absolutely blew my mind, guys. No matter what your political affiliation is, after this video, if you listen to the facts that I'm going to give you, and this is mostly revolving around historical facts, you're going to have a really hard time saying that it makes any sense for Florida to waste its resources running through a recount here. First off, understand something. If you are a resident of the state of Florida, your money pays for any recounts that are done. The court proceedings to decide whether or not there will be a recount are primarily going to be paid for by the two candidates going through the court process, although of course we are paying for the judges and whatnot whose time is being expended hearing out those cases. But the actual process of doing the recount is paid for by your taxpayer dollars. So you may be saying, well, I don't care, I'll pay my money, I don't want Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis to win the election, so we'll just recount the votes 100 times until we get the results that we want. Well, here's the problem. The margins in the races in question are 12,500 plus, and over, I think 35,000 is the other one. I'm not exactly sure. It's something much larger than the first. Either of these numbers are 10 times or greater the largest change ever affected in modern politics by a recount. Now, there have been 27 recounts in elections in the United States of America since the year 2000, or from the year 2000 to the year 2016, when the last election occurred. In those 27 recounts, 3 of them led to the votes being overturned. So now you may be saying to yourself, well, see, there you go. It might be really rare, but it does happen. Well, here's the problem. Remember those numbers we talked about just a little bit ago? 12,000, 33,000? Well, the biggest impact ever carried by a recount was right here in Florida, and it was 1,247 votes. Less than 1/10 the margin needed to overturn the closer of these two elections. And that is the largest of all those recounts, of all those 27 recounts. The most change was just over 1,200 votes. It is insane, absolutely insane, to think that there is even the most remote chance of somebody, or of this race actually being reversed. And for the amount of taxpayer dollars that need to be wasted for that vote to be, pushed through as a result of such a huge margin, first off, you have to hold Democratic Party way up here and not give a about the taxpayers in the state of Florida. Bill Nelson, Andrew Gillum do not give a about Florida or its taxpayers. They could not care less. They would bleed you dry to benefit their particular political party. And don't get me wrong, alright? I'm sure a lot of Republicans would too, but these guys right now have it wildly on display. And keep in mind, this, again, is not me picking a side here, because just a couple of days ago, you can go back and see a video in which I very much complimented Andrew Gillum for the grace with which he had originally conceded the election. This is absolutely an opinion of this is the right thing to do and this is the wrong thing to do. And we have history and we have numbers and we have facts to go back and look at. And it would be just as stupid and deplorable were a Republican candidate to do it. If you live in a state right now where there's some Republican candidate in some small mayoral race or a congressional race or something that somehow has evaded my attention and they're doing something similar, please let me know. By all means, comment and tell me, and I'll make a video about that too, and I will call them out just as quickly. But it's BS. It is a waste of the taxpayer money, not a waste of their money. Not even the court case is essentially a waste of their money. You know why? If we look up Bill Nelson right now, we can see the bright shining red buttons, which should be, there should be an image of this on the screen right now, for donations to the Emergency Response Recount Fund. So, of course, Rick Scott and the GOP are about to pile everything they've got into this. For what? I'm sorry, but to blame Rick Scott for you demanding a recount, to blame Rick Scott and then say, okay, now I need the voters to give me more money than they already did to fund my campaign, than they're already going to have to do to pay out of pocket to have, the elections officials do this recount. And the thing that I want you to keep in your mind, understand all of this, I'm not fundamentally saying that all recounts are by necessity wrong, and nobody should ever demand a recount. If the difference was 1,000 votes, the recount should be mandatory. If the difference was 2,000 votes, still do it. If it was 5,000, 6,000 votes, maybe we're on shaky ground. Given, again, the history of recounts and the fact that the most turnaround they've ever done was 1,200, but still, maybe some freaky thing happened, and 5,000 or 6,000 votes, maybe just to be on the safe side, we should recount. But that's not what we're talking about here. We are talking about a difference that is 30 times greater than the largest change ever mounted by a recount. Now, another thing that I've heard people talking about on why this time is different, and why even though no recount has ever even changed 1,500 votes, this one might change 32,000. Justification that I've heard behind this is, well, it's because of the overvotes and the undervotes. Well, what is an overvote or an undervote, and why would this matter? Well, an undervote is when no clear determination can be made on a ballot, first by the automated system and then by a manual re-examination, that a vote is being made in a particular race. For example, on my particular ballot this year, my congressional race would have been considered an undervote because I did not vote in that race. I did so intentionally for my own personal reasons, but that would be an example of an undervote. An overvote is when you have two or more, the system verifies two or more candidates having been selected in a single field on a ballot. Again, first by the automated system and then by a manual review, which is where a human being goes, okay, the system didn't count this one, let's take a look and look why. Okay, they bubbled in every candidate. This vote does not count. That's an overvote. So why is the situation with undervotes and overvotes unique in this particular election? Well, it's not, as a matter of fact. The first example I can find of undervotes and overvotes, particularly being cited in this election, actually came from the Republican Party, and it was in their defense their first line defense to them forcing, for the Democratic parties, forcing a full recount. And they said, well, here's what we'll do. We'll get the courts to order that all of the undervotes and overvotes, just votes that were reviewed as being undervotes or overvotes, are brought out for manual examination, basically able to be viewed by both sides and everything. So we can all look at them. We can have our teams all, go through, obviously under supervision of the election authorities, and say, okay, no, I think this one, because of this or this, should be counted as a vote for Scott. This was clearly a mistake, whatever, or, whatever happens. They ordered a review of the undervotes and the overvotes on specifically absentee ballots from Brevard and Broward County. I have an email from one of the campaign committees that explains that part, and I'll have Maria put it up because I don't remember exactly what it said. But for some reason, somebody, I don't know, on Twitter or something, read undervotes and overvotes, and they said, oh, well, that's a thing, and that can change votes. And somehow that became like the rallying cry of Democrats trying to justify this exorbitant waste of money. And here's the thing. If I were to go out right now and buy a lottery ticket, that lottery ticket has about the same chance of hitting the jackpot as this was of overturning 5,000 votes, okay? Just based on statistical, probability. And really, it's got more of a chance than that because somebody has won the lottery before. Nobody has ever overturned 5,000 votes in a recount. Keep in mind here, guys, this is a 32,000 vote margin. This is, to me, it's sad. I look at this and I'm very sad. Yes, as a result of this, I've gone from thinking that Bill Nelson was a decent senator who overstayed his welcome to genuinely thinking he's disgusting and corrupt. I had even said in my original review of the race that I probably would have voted for Bill Nelson against most Republicans. I went from 2 days ago praising Andrew Gillum to now, again, finding him to be a deplorable, corrupt person. That's the result. So you guys know, if this were to ever reach your campaign headquarters by some strange chance, that's the result that you are having right now on actual real Florida voters, not the type of people who are super partisan and are always going to vote right or always going to vote left just because they're righties or they're lefties or whatever, on real Florida voters who really just care about the well-being of the state. People who just want honesty and transparency, but who can read and who can find out the history of recount results. And I'm so sad, and I don't necessarily blame you guys. I think you're disgusting, but I don't blame you because I think that you're products of a system. It's a system that has led to this mentality, which starts at the very top of each political party, bleeds its way down. And I think the politicians are the worst, but the voters are definitely part of it too. And it's this idea that political party is more important than state or country. If some all-powerful being came down right now and told me, your life right now depends on answering this question correctly. Does Bill Nelson care about the voters of the state of Florida more than he cares about himself? No. Not even close. And I would live. And I truly believe that. Of course, we can't read a man's heart, but if there were some way to prove that put in front of me, I would stake my life on it. And that disappoints me, because even at the end of the day, Bill Nelson is not reelected. The fact that a man like that And not just a man who has that mentality, because again, I bet you a lot of politicians do if we could really get down to their heart, and that doesn't matter if they're left or right leaning. But a man that would so quickly even cast aside the facade that he gave about the people of the state that he was running to represent in the Senate. That a man like that was even able to become a major candidate in our Senate race is a bad sign for the condition that our country is in. These guys aren't even bothering to hide it anymore. And the problem is that so many of the voters feel the same way. They also feel Democratic Party over the country or Republican Party over the country. I don't care if half of the nation's citizens just burn. I don't care because they disagree with me. That mentality is a mentality that is going to doom this country. That mentality makes me so frustrated to be where I am, because I'm literally just this one person who feels like they're looking at this world through a rational lens, and I'm screaming as loud as I can, guys, look, what the fuck is going on? We need to do something. These two factions are screwing us. And at best, on a good day, 1,000 people hear me. And like half of them care. And it's so frustrating to me. It's so frustrating. Good night.